Good evening, everyone. This is Steve Rao. I'm a council member in the town of Morrisville and also a moderator for Radio Mirchi. I want to thank you all for attending this evening. I want to thank you all for watching the wonderful movie, Remarkable Journey. Special thanks to Steve Channing, who's produced the movie. And we also want to thank UNC-TV for televising this broadcast as we celebrate Asian American Heritage Month. And we also want to thank Radio Mirchi, who will be broadcasting this tomorrow and on Sunday over the weekend. And it's going to be playing not only in the Triangle, but in Baltimore, Philadelphia, and around the United States. So we can tell our story of the remarkable journey of the Indian American community in North Carolina. Just a couple of logistics. We're going to jump into a very distinguished panel. We want to thank these leaders of our community for taking time to be with us this evening. And after their section, we will then open it up for the audience for questions, where you will be submitting your questions via chat to ask any question you want about this wonderful movie. With that being said, I'm honored to have a very distinguished panel for you this evening. The first is Lou Simopoulos, who is the lead producer of Remarkable Journey. She worked with Steve Channing, the director, to produce this movie. We have Himanshu Shah, the CEO of Shah Capital, a community leader here in North Carolina, who co-produced this movie. Vandana Dake, principal at Alliance Architecture. She's an architect, but also co-produced this film. And Dr. Subhash Gumber. He's the gastroenterologist at Cary and Raleigh Medical Group. He's also the former chairman of UNC Impact and works with UNC Chapel Hill on the Global Leadership Council. I want to once again thank each of our guests for being with me this evening. I'll be moderating this discussion, and we're going to dive right into this engaging hour. So Lou, I'm going to start with you. Tell me a little bit about how this idea came about to produce this film, and what was it about this Indian American or Asian community that lit a spark to move forward and do a movie?
Well, Video Dialogue is a production company that largely produces films about the peoples of North Carolina. So basically we produce shows that portray the histories of various peoples of North Carolina. And over the years, we have looked at the different populations that are here, and we began to see this large growing community of Asian Indians, and decided that it was going to be a good idea to tell the story of this population, of this particular culture, as North Carolina was now home to this people, and we, as their neighbors, wanted to learn more about them. And this is what Video Dialogue does. We tell these stories about all the different peoples in our midst.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And before I go to Himanshu, I also forgot to mention that I want to thank everyone that's joining on Facebook. This is also being streamed on my Facebook site, Facebook-SRAO. So thank you for joining us on Facebook. So I'm going to go now to Himanshu Shah. Himanshu, you're a very busy global businessman. You do a lot for our community with HumSub and other organizations. What was it about, what motivated you to take time to get behind this movie? And why do you believe it's important for North Carolina and this country to do this movie?
Good to be here, Steve. Thanks for doing this. First of all, every immigrant, we're a country of immigrants, and everyone has their story. But when I came to know that there is no movie or documentary that has been done of the first or second generation of Indian Americans, it really surprised me, and that was the biggest draw. You have, the documentary that we saw captures the stories that took place 50, 40, 30 years or so ago. And this Indian Americans, had their dreams to be a better professional or a better human being, or to give a better life to their family members, to their children and the future generation. And I think that's what we try to capture in Remarkable Journey. And so for that, I want to give a lot of credit to our director, Steve Channing, and his team members, as well as all the supporters of Remarkable Journey, the participants of the documentary, and also my co-producer, Vandana. Because it was, from conception to reality, it almost took 5 years, almost like developing a new drug. And we had our struggles, but we persevered. And as you saw, it was a good creation. So I want to thank everyone for that too.
That's great. That's a very great answer. Thank you so much. So as I do this moderation, I'm sort of looking at the different transformations of this community. I think the movie did such a good job talking about spiritual, cultural, economic, political. Dr. Gumber, I have 2 questions for you, but I'm going to start with the political transformation. You, as the former chair of North Carolina Indian PAC, we now today have Senator Chaudhary, the minority whip, Satish Garamella on the city council, Dimple Mayor in Charlotte, and also the home of Subhash Chatterjee, who's been a national leader on the U.S.-India relationship, hosted the visits with the ambassador, Shringla recently. So talk a little bit about the political engagement of this community and what excites you about that as we continue to progress as a community.
So I came to North Carolina about 25 years ago. At that time, Subhash Chatterjee was involved, but generally as a whole community, there was very little engagement, political engagement and awareness. So in 2008, I believe it was, when President Obama was running for president, and it was a very exciting time. And I think a lot of, some of us came together and felt that we need a face for the political, a political face for the community to get engaged with the local authorities and with the national authorities and get the whole community engaged into this. And that's how we got involved and formed the North Carolina Indian American Political Committee. And since then, as you know, the rest is history. You guys, there was no political leader, elected leader at that time in any position at any level. And now we have a councilwoman at large in Charlotte, Ajmera, as you mentioned, yourself elected from Morrisville, and then Satish Garamella from Morrisville, and then we have a senator, Jay Chaudhary. And so we have done, we have raised millions of dollars since then to help elect people and the people who represent the values of the Indian community.
So that's excellent. And I think it's taken a lot of this community to build those relationships, and hopefully we'll have more to follow. Just as a quick follow-up, real quickly, before I get to Vandana, healthcare. I want to get this in now because we're doing 2 rounds of questions. We have so much healthcare professionals here coming here during the COVID pandemic. A lot of these immigrants are stepping up, whether it's HSNC donating masks and many medical physicians in the front line. So why is it? What is it about this region that's bringing many people from this Indian community in to become physicians? And why are they doing so much today in the midst of such a global crisis?
Is that question for Vandana?
Oh, well, no, just for you in healthcare.
Oh, for myself. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
before I get to
as you know, 1 in 5, 4 or 5 medical professionals in this country are of Indian origin. So you're going to see them everywhere. And same thing in North Carolina. I think the numbers are very similar, but 25% of the physicians and other professionals are of Indian origin. And I think one thing, the reason people come to North Carolina, or physicians come to North Carolina, is the same reason everybody else does. It's a beautiful state. It offers a lot of great healthcare, great IT, education, and so forth. So, and I see also how Indian religious organizations are stepping up and delivering thousands of meals and making masks and so forth. And I think there's an element of gratitude. Is that this country has given us a home. It has given us countless opportunities, and we have taken advantage of it, done very, very well, and we owe it to the country. And also, we're all in it together. Either way.
Yeah.
We're all
so many, and we want to thank BAPS and Chinese American Friendship Association, all these organizations are doing so much. So we just want to thank them all.
Yep.
Okay, Vandana, well, thank you, Dr. Gumber. Vandana, I guess I'm going to tie both questions in for you. You know, what did this movie mean to you, just in terms of co-producing this movie? But in terms of the economic transformation, I teared up a little bit when I saw the late Dr. Mansukh Wani, who passed away about 2 weeks ago. We pray for his family. A real innovator, pioneer, an example of one of the engineers that produced a cancer preventing drug. But there's been so much innovation, new jobs being created, businesses. What do you want this movie to say to the people that are talking about innovation, the new jobs of the economy, and what drew this community here to the North Carolina, but to the Research Triangle particularly?
So first of all, namaste to all of you. This is a new way of saying hello to everyone. This movie meant a lot to me because this is my story. I'm an immigrant too, and I came to this country 20. So the struggles that every immigrant has, the pining for the Indian food, the hunger, the not being able to sleep because it's so quiet, it so resonated. So this is like each one of our story. And that's the reason I got so engaged in it. And I helped Steve to kind of take this further, and also went to India, took him to India and showed him what India was about, besides just Indians in North Carolina. Coming to the economic part of it, I think obviously the contribution of the Indian community is so significant here, significantly larger than the percentage of the population, whether it's Dr. Bani, Dr. Narayan, and so many others. To me, the more profound question where we have today as a country is, what is the story of the people who wanted to come here and contribute way beyond their means? Once they got here, and yet this country is currently pursuing policies, that keep these people out. How do we make sure, there's success for everyone? Because most of the Indians have done so well in this country, whether it's in IT, whether it is in medicine, whether it is in technology, in all these fields. So how can we say enough, what can we do to make sure that the current policies respect immigration and are open to ideas?
Okay, that's an excellent answer. Thank you so much. Lou, my question to you, we're going to do another round of questions before we open up to the audience, but we're doing well on time. Is there anything that comes to mind? This is such an interesting movie when you see it. Is there anything that you learned something about somebody in the community, or something that was going on that you didn't know before, or any story that jumps out at you as you all interview people or leaders in our community?
Well, in general, we interviewed around 50 people from the community, and there were so many amazing stories. And a lot of the stories showed me, in addition to the history that I was learning about India, we had 3 excellent consultants, one of whom was Usha Rajagopalan, who was really very well versed in the history of the country, and helped me to see a lot of the aspects of this culture. One of the most amazing things that I learned in gathering all of this, researching all of this, and finally putting it into an outline to create this show, was how much our Western culture has been infused by, came from the Indian culture. This was something that I had never learned. Being an immigrant myself, my background is from Greece. We always believed that Greece is where everything came from. And we suddenly discover, actually, a lot of the things that we have in the West came from further east and from longer ago. And it was an astonishing thing to learn. How much of our culture, our Western culture, was influenced by your culture, your Indian culture.
Thank you.
I have to say that continues to just amaze me.
That's fantastic. Himanshu, it's already been 5 years since we've made the movie. Let's talk about the next generation. So 20 years from now, our children's children see this movie. What do you want them to learn from this movie? Not only Indian Americans, but other North Carolinians, other immigrant communities? What message do you want them to get from watching this movie?
Well, first of all, as you saw in the documentary, that, the stories took place, 50, 40, 30 years ago, as I said earlier. But back in those days, there was no internet, there was very little technology. Even Indian Americans or any immigrants were reluctant to use telephone because it was so darn expensive. And all this first generation Indian Americans, they persevered. They had their struggles, and they just became a better person, better human being, better professional. And I think that's a lot for the current generation or the future generation to learn from, the grit that they showed. And people, that we are going through COVID-19, and people complain, some of them at least, that I can't spend time, I can't go outside, and so forth and so on. And look at these people, they completely came to a different culture, different religion, different language, and they not only survived, but prospered. So I think that's the biggest takeaway as you watch a remarkable journey.
Okay, that's an excellent answer. So Dr. Gumber, I'm going to go to you, and we talked about politics, healthcare. You're very involved with global engagement, being in UNC's leadership, Global Leadership Council. UNC now has a modern studies program for India. So what is it about global engagement and diversity? Why, in these times that we live in today, do you believe it's so important for North Carolina? And I'll end with, we now have an office in Bangalore, India, for our governor and our Commerce Department with Chris Chung and Secretary Copeland for foreign direct investment. So what is it about global engagement that's important, and why do you think it's so important?
So Steve, that's a great question. I think global engagement is essential both ways, because this is such an interconnected world. And I can count hundreds of Indian Americans and other foreign-born immigrants who have come here, gone through our universities, and have done a wonderful job. Have created thousands of jobs. Have created cures of diseases like Dr. Vani, Dr. Priya Krishnani. I could just name countless people who've done a tremendous job and created a great economy and helped with jobs here. But also, I think our higher education leaders understand that, and they have. That's why the UNC has created this global leadership program, where they are actually engaged with about 60 countries all over the globe, where they have at any given time hundreds of students and faculty members who go out there and work in different environments, do research, do service, public health work, all kinds of things. And I'll tell you a little small example of the benefit of that. So when a few years ago, if you remember, Ebola erupted in Western Africa, near Congo, and at Gilling School of Medicine, Dr. Rolf Berg, whose lab is one of the best in the world in virology, they collaborated over there. They were working over there, and they developed this medication remdesivir, which you heard recently, yes. Right? It was developed at that time by Dr. Berg's office. And they helped contain Ebola at that time. It didn't become a pandemic. It just remained a small epidemic. Yeah. Now, many years later, Corona is all over the world, and the same medication is helping moderate to severe disease in coronavirus. It's been just recently approved. And again, with the help of Dr. Barrick's lab. And so these collaborations bring a lot of value. And just like Himanshu said, students going out and experiencing the rest of the world, when they come back, they are different people. They are absolutely different people. They see how the rest of the world lives and manages their affairs with very little in many cases. And we can do a whole lot better here and not complain about stuff. So I think Global Leadership Council, and I think this UNC program is one of the best in the world. And that's why I'm fortunate to be part of it.
Okay, fantastic. Vandana, you talked about the economic transformation. It's just amazing. 62% of all PhDs in the R2P are foreign born, 32% of STEM graduates. And, I think somehow the economic impact of immigrant communities is sometimes overlooked. But I guess my question to you is the same I asked Himanshu. What is it you want other communities around this state, around the United States of America, to learn, particularly our youth? I know there's been some efforts of Steve Channing has been working on putting DVDs in the schools. Why do you think it's so important for our children to learn about this as we pass America on to them to lead this great country?
So Steve, it's a really good question. I think if we all pause for a few seconds and think about this movie, what it's talking about people who came here to improve their lives. They worked really hard. They came with fresh ideas, new ideas, and they really integrated very well in the community. Very hard work, whether it's the Patels or whether it's Dr. Bani, very hard work, very sincere, dedicated. And I think what's coming out of this is, and especially in today's world where, and this has really taught us a lot of things, is we cannot be isolated and just fend for ourselves. We are all in this together. We have to work together, be with each other, support each other in this country, in this state, in this world. We just have to learn to respect each other, live with each other. To me, I very strongly feel now it's no more about them and us. We are all in this together, and this movie is like telling us more and more about that hey, we got to be together to conquer this and to move forward.
Yes, and I think just that you're judged by the content of your character, and the American dream is a dream that can be claimed by anyone, no matter where they come from. So it's just a great message. Well, I'm going to now open it up to the audience, and unless there's any other thoughts that you all have, we want to just take some questions from anyone joining in about the Remarkable Journey movie. Any insight that you have that we can learn and take, and we have a little bit more time. We're not in a rush. We have till 9. We might end up a little early, but I wanted to just Ian, do we have any questions, or we can continue to have a discussion amongst ourselves? I know I had Professor Anshu Chari shot a nice message thanking everybody, and she's doing a great job at UNC Chapel Hill. I was in India with her last year in Bengal with the Secretary of State and a couple of leaders of the community. But thank you for being here, Dr. Chari. Okay, there's no questions right now. I think everyone's, it's a nice evening. Are there any, thoughts that you all, pardon?
There's one hand up. What does that mean?
One hand up. Okay, we have one hand up. Yeah, let me see. I think. Oh, okay. I got one question.
I have a question for Lou. So, Lou, after this, what is your next? Do you think you want to pursue with this movie further, or what is next for you?
Well, I mean, I think that showing this film to other communities, I really like hearing from Steve that he's talking about perhaps sending it to other places in the country, because what I found in this film as we were creating it, and for myself as the daughter of immigrants, but also all immigrant populations, this story is the American story. I mean, it is the story. We are a nation of immigrants. It is a story that, even though it might be particular to this particular group of people, to this particular culture, it is a story that should resonate with all peoples here who have a history from elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's a great.
I think that sending it around the country would be a wonderful thing. I think it would be really good.
So I have one.
Suggesting that.
Well, thank you. I have one. We have some questions coming in. So I'm gonna put this question to Lou, Himanshu, and Vandana, and this is from Professor Anisha Chari from UNC Chapel Hill. She says, congratulations on a very moving film about this community, Indian American community. Would it be possible to have a screening at UNC Chapel Hill for the Modern Indian Studies Initiative once things normalize, along with the panel discussion?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I can answer
Yeah,
that
we could
actually.
make-
So Steve Channing and I have been taking these movies to like smaller individual groups, but I mean, that's a great idea. Definitely. We're open. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, and I'm a little biased to Tar Heel. I know Himanshu is as well. We both have children at UNC, finished up their freshman year. So the other question I got is, how did you, and I've always wondered this myself, how did you do the research on the family's histories and the different folks that you went about and interviewed? Because you got a name. Did you have to do some research before you met them? How did that process work?
Usha was the person who, she knew so many people in the community. She basically was our advisor in this regard. She was able, we told her that we wanted a diverse group of people to interview from all of the different communities, all the different Indian communities that were here. And Usha was excellent at basically directing us to all these different communities. She knew about them. She knew about their histories. She knew stories that we might get when we interviewed them. It was really invaluable to have someone from the community guiding us. We couldn't have done it otherwise. And
But
she was.
I also
who
think,
knew.
Lou, I also think in the beginning, I don't know if Gumber will remember, there was a group of like 7 or 8 key, founders who got together, right? And then the community identified that there are these interesting people like Dr. Bani, for example, right? So certain people who were, they were very close to end of their careers or whatever. And, the community also identified several people that, hey, these are the people you need to talk to.
But I have to
true.
compliment Lou and Steve because they took the time to get to know people. They didn't rush through things. They really went to people's homes, had meals, sat there, talked to them for hours, and really got to know them before they would film or do all that. So a lot of credit to you guys for that.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of work went into making this movie. Another question is it possible, well, once again, thanks about everyone and being involved in this panel and the movie. Is it possible to get involved with future projects like this film? If someone had an idea, how would they go about getting involved with something like this?
You mean an idea for a completely different community, a different topic?
Yeah, I mean, or just in general, if somebody, and I'm thinking that from the perspective of, sounds like interesting, project for a college kid, who might be studying film and they want to get involved with, I want to help produce this movie. Is that, I guess, just reach out and give you an idea and then?
Well, reaching out to Video Dialogue would be a start, but of course, a big part of any project is going to be the funding and the support that will be there in order to help a project move along. There's a lot that goes into one of these projects, so it's partly is finding an organization that can put all of this together to create a video, and then part of it also is having the funding in order to be able to realize it.
Also, actually, this was funded by Southern Documentary Funds, correct? They are the fiscal sponsors. So if you reach out to them, also they have several projects always, and they can, kind of guide you. Hey, there's a project that you can work on.
Right.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a great. This other question comes from, he's the current chair of NC Impact, Bharat Vedak. He's asking a question, and NC Impact's in North Carolina Indian Political Action Committee. What should be our next challenge as a community? And I guess Subhash, I'm going to point that to you and maybe Vandana. What do you think for this community? What is the next challenge?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I'm not sure that there is not a challenge. I think that the challenge comes to keep the people engaged. We have created the PAC, we have worked on it, we have helped elect people, but to keep people engaged is somewhat of a challenge. and we got to keep working at it. That's all I can say.
Yes.
But we are far along in terms of where we were compared to where we were. So we need to keep working at it.
Okay. I mean, well, this is
Okay.
excellent.
And I think electing more people in appropriate places and the right people in the appropriate places because they can make contribution. And I think also electing, asking people to volunteer for many of the commissions and to volunteer for helping the state. And that's where we have always found a challenge, where we can't find right people for the lots of the organizations that need help for the state. So we can work on that.
Well, I mean, it's a great answer. And I got another comment. This is a very interesting subject for people to learn about the Indian American history in North Carolina, but I imagine it was also interesting to the Indian community as well. What do you all believe was the response to this documentary? To Lou, and we'll start with you. But for anyone, what do you believe, based on what you've heard and seen, or your friends or networks, what was the response to this movie?
Most people that I spoke to talked about how it was something this was something they really didn't know about. They didn't know so many of the aspects that we tried to portray in this. They were as surprised, I guess, as I was as I learned these things, because people don't know very much about this community, and it's good that people found it interesting.
Okay.
Because it is. Well,
so my son-in-law, Wesley Cranford, this was a good introduction for him to get to know us. So, I mean, it's a great way of somebody to get to know the culture. And I think I've got a lot of positive feedback about that.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's the answer. They asked the question on what was the response. I think the response was positive, and I think it just was a reminder of the great things that could be achieved. And I think and that's a good segue into the next question is, did we get any feedback from other communities about this movie? Like, in other words, we have a growing Chinese American community, Korean community, Vietnamese community, and just many, many communities, any nationality, right? And so what is that? And that's from Bosco Vinapali, but what, have other communities seen this, or is that something we might do, is go to the Chinese American Friendship Association and present this movie to them, right? Under the banner. And we are celebrating Asian American Heritage Month.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. Has there been an effort, Lou, or is that something we can take as a possible thing to do? Or maybe we've given you your next project.
I'm not aware of there being an effort to take it to other communities. Vandana, are you aware of that?
No, I think the first goal is to take it to the Indian community, first our state and then around the country, and then go back to India with it too. We've been talking to some Indian producers, some producers, venues in India. Maybe once things open up the year after next, take it back to India.
Okay. I mean, anyway, we want to thank you for that suggestion. And I think it's an excellent idea. And Councilmember Ya Lu is a first Chinese American woman elected in Cary. And I know she and I are working together on combining the efforts of the Indian American and Chinese American communities. So maybe that's something we can work on with her, possibly. Are there any other questions before I do a final thank you? If you have any questions, you can always send them in later. We are going to be sending an email out on when this is going to be airing on the radio across the Triangle and around the country in different markets, particularly Baltimore, Philadelphia, and I think even Texas. So it'll be great. North Carolina, I hope our governor's happy. We're getting the message out about North Carolina to the rest of the country. And so I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to, basically, I want to, first of all, once again, thank UNC-TV for hosting this television documentary. I want to thank Radio Mirchi for going to be broadcasting this on the radio. And I want to really thank Steve Channing and Lou for producing this, along with the leadership of Himanshu Shah, who's did so much for this movie, along with Vandana. We want to thank you so much. And, my final message is that, I grew up in West Virginia, and there weren't a big Indian community there, but I never dreamt I would live in a town where I could have a South Indian coffee. I could go watch cricket, listen to Radio Mirchi, and end my day with a Bollywood performance at Hindu Society. And I really miss those days when we weren't social distancing. So I think is amazing the impact of one community and the effect it's had on commerce, on politics. And Governor Cooper, I think, is so lucky that as he leads the state of first flight, that he has in the crew the Indian American community, because I think it's proof that there's no limit to how high you can fly. There's no limit to the potential of this great state or any state in the union if we value the greatest minds coming together. So that's just my final message, and I want to thank each of you. You're very busy, and thank you for enduring my moderation for the end of our day. But we appreciate it.
Thank you,
Steve.
Steve, for organizing.
Thank you for all the work. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, we got a question. This will be on YouTube. We've recorded this. We'll be sharing this across the state of North Carolina, to Charlotte, to Winston, to Greenville. Some of them are listening tonight, but they've been asking me. Yes, we will be sharing this on YouTube, and it's up on my Facebook site. And no, I'm not at City Hall. This is a backdrop.
See ya.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Have
you
a
all.
wonderful evening, and we want to thank everybody for being with us this evening. Thank you for attending, and please stay safe out there, and our prayers are with our family and our state and our country as we fight and defeat this pandemic together as Americans. Thank you.
There's Steve. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.